Hello, and on behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Hybrid Cloud Storage for Virtualized Environments, presented by Steve Costigan, Senior Director Solution Architect for Zadara. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive an email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. And third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All attendees from today's webcast who opted in at registration will be entered into a raffle to win a 200-pound Amazon gift card. The winner will be contacted directly by Zadara, so good luck. All right, let's get started. Steve, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having us. As I mentioned, or as Julie mentioned, I'm Steve Costigan. I'm the Senior Director for International Solutions Architects here at Zadara. So I'm pleased to present to you today the Zadara environment and the ecosystem. And really what I want to take you through is an understanding of where we see enterprise data management for hybrid IT and some use cases on enhancing VMware with Zadara. And then finally, to finish off with why partner with Zadara, and I mean by partner, not just be a customer. We truly value our partnerships with our customers and our service provider partners, and then we'll finish off with some Q&A. However, in terms of Q&A, if you've got some questions, especially around the slides as I present them, please pop them into the questions. If I notice them, I think it's relevant to answer at that point, I will stop and go through that. If not, I'll leave them to the end and answer them as needed. Okay, so in terms of Zadara and why to utilize Zadara, we believe that the world is changing, certainly in terms of cloud and cloud capabilities, and enterprises need the enterprise capabilities of storage, but they need the agility of cloud. So in terms of what we're offering is we're providing an enterprise class data management layer with cloud economics. So what this means is delivering a multi-tier, multi-location, multi-tenant capability that enables you to have cloud scalability both up and down with cloud economics, i.e. pay for only what you're consuming. So that scale up mechanism means that you can add capabilities as you see fit, and you can scale them back down again should things change in your environment. This also means that you're able to change your technology as your business demands change. So that might mean utilizing new drive technologies, utilizing new protocols. But the key here is that this is an on-demand capability. And this as an on-demand capability is delivered in a very, very unique way. So we're delivering the same capabilities in terms of an enterprise class data storage management layer with any protocol, so fiber channel, iSCSI and ISA from a block perspective, NFS and CIFS from a NAS perspective, and then S3 and Swift compatible object layer, all within a single ecosystem, but enabling you to have some very, very unique capabilities. So enabling this block file and object, any data type tier, combining that with any location, whether that's on premises in your own facility, whether that's into a public cloud provider such as Amazon, AWS, or via a service provider, therefore enabling you to have a complete end-to-end hybrid IT capability. So how are we delivering this? Effectively, what we're doing is we're providing an enterprise management capability that enables you to have choice. So that choice is to deploy on premises in exactly the same way that we would provide into a service provider or attach into a hyperscale provider. We're providing a multi-tenant capability that allows you to define what your data services are going to be. We include things like antivirus capabilities into our NAS capability. We have a great relationship with some of the backup vendors like Veeam, and I'll cover off how we do that. But also integration, to provide support into VMware for things like block storage, NAS storage, and object storage as those requirements come from new applications as they develop within your environment. So really what we're providing underneath that layer is this concept of what we'll call a virtual private storage array, or a VPSA, as I'll refer to in some of the later slides. And alongside that, we have an object storage capability that enables large scale object capabilities for things like archive data, backup data, or even analytics data. Again, depends on what your applications are. They could be big data analytics, they could be production IT infrastructure. But the key here is that it's one product solution set, regardless of how you deploy that, whether it is on premises or via a service provider or via a public cloud. So underneath the covers, what is it we're doing? We're creating this concept of a virtualized array, but we're doing it in a very, very different way to everybody else, and very different to the way that most people are familiar with from a VMware perspective around vSAN, or utilizing some of the virtualized storage array that will sit as a VM on top of VMware. We're not providing that. We're providing a complete hardware and software stack, consumed in an OpEx model, where you're providing a capability that can scale. And the way that we scale is each VPSA is completely independent. Therefore, it has its own user accounts, its own management entity. We provide dedicated resources, and I'll talk about those more in the next slide. And therefore, you can mix and match for different workloads, even within a single enterprise. So you may have an environment that needs a VDI environment, and therefore you need an all-flash array, and you want to utilize our NVMe storage capabilities with dedupe and compression. You may have another environment that doesn't need dedupe and compression, so you can turn that off on a per volume basis, but you still want to make use of an all-flash environment. And then you can complement that by having a magnetic media VPSA hybrid array. Maybe that's being used for your Veeam backup primary tier, and then supplementing that with a scale-out backup repository using our object storage environment. And this enables you to have an environment with immutability to counteract things like ransomware. Okay, so we're very, very different in our approach to an end-to-end data management and storage platform strategy. Underneath the covers, if we look at the physical capabilities of what we deploy, so if this is into your own on-premises capability, we operate based on something that we call storage nodes. Those storage nodes are general purpose Intel servers that we connect using a very high speed, low latency ISA interconnect between those nodes. This allows a scalable architecture. So as the requirements change in your environment, adding more storage requirements, we simply deploy additional storage nodes. This allows scalability to scale out all the way up to hundreds of nodes within a single cloud environment. Now within this, what we're doing is we're creating these virtual controllers. Those virtual controllers will exist as a high availability pair for standard VPSAs. And that means that you have controller high availability across a distributed world. But we pin those CPUs, we pin the RAM, and we also map dedicated drives to those virtual controllers. And we utilize SRIOV, so single root IO virtualization, to map the physical hardware through to the compute layer, i.e. the controller layer, and therefore that allows mapping directly of those drives. This allows us end-to-end separation. So this allows separation from one application to another, or one tenant to another, right the way through the stack. So this gives you the ability to dynamic, flexible capable the physical environments in terms of the controller size. So you can go from 2 CPU cores all the way to 48 CPU cores within a single storage array. You can scale that with additional drives, so a mix of SSD drives, SATA drives, and SSD cache accelerated SATA drives. So again, a very, very dynamic and flexible environment where you can repurpose those drives depending upon different needs at different times. And because we're doing this in a flexible manner, we're going to deploy what you need day one with the ability for you to scale on demand. So there will be additional resources available to you to be able to turn on and scale and utilize those resources. You start paying for those when they're actually utilized. In terms of features and functionality, most storage vendors are offering common capabilities today, things that you would expect, certainly in terms of block and file in any unified capability. We augment that with having object within our capabilities as well. But the key difference here is having that separation, different drives for block and file from object storage, and therefore different physical management entities. And this, ensures that you're able to offer a proper backup mechanism for your data. And I'll cover it off a little bit later on how we do some of this. Combining that with all flash, where as we go through different workloads, people are now starting to encrypt VMs and encrypt applications at the application layer. And the more you do that, then the more it comes into question around dedupe as to how well you can dedupe within an environment. So from our perspective, we've taken the stance that you as the customer decide whether an application is good for dedupe and compression or not, and we enable you to turn that on or off on a per volume basis, rather than it being a all on or all off dedupe and compression capability. Combine this with thin provision volumes. It means that you're able to over provision, you're able to make use of our thin provision technology and our cloning capabilities to provide a capability that allows you to instantly clone a database, present that to another instance, and make use of that without having to do a full copy. We support large volume sizes, so we can go to 100 terabytes on our standard volumes. For our backup tier or archive tier capabilities, we can go up to 200 terabyte volume sizes within a single volume. But then, because of the scale out nature of what we do, we can keep scaling and offer multiple volumes and multiple data sets. In combination with that, we have this capability of NFS and CIFS with Active Directory integration. So you can create a VPSA that's a NAS environment, and especially if you're a service provider and you need multi-tenancy and you want to have a dedicated NAS environment that is virtualized with Active Directory integration for each tenant, and to have things like user quotas, group quotas, project quotas, etc. Then this is a very, very powerful capability of providing that dynamic virtualization and dynamic aggregation. Our on-premise customers can make use of Fiber Channel, whether you're cloud connected or service provider connected or on-premises, regardless of iSCSI block is very much there as a standard. ISA, VMware introduced ISA in ESX 6.7. We were very early into developing ISA over an RDMA converged Ethernet perspective in conjunction with Mellanox. Way back in 2015, we've been pushing this technology and this capability for over 5 years. So we're very much been at the leading point in delivering ISA capabilities into a VMware environment for a long time. And really, just by utilizing Mellanox NICs in your compute, i.e. your VMware layer, and moving to ISA, we see real world capabilities of 33 to 40% improvement of just switching from the iSCSI software initiator to the ISA hardware initiator from Mellanox. And that's a relatively simple change and update. We have capabilities for stretched clusters. So this is something we call multi-zone high availability. It allows us to deploy part of the infrastructure in one rack or one data center, part in another rack or another data center, and stretch the Zadara cluster across that environment. You can also do the same from the compute element, therefore providing seamless failover between different racks, different data halls, or even different data centers. We also were really early in recognizing that the world is moving towards a microservices and a Kubernetes environment. And we've provided a Kubernetes CSI driver that fully supports our block and NAS capabilities, supports our snapshot and mirroring capabilities. This gives us the ability to support persistent storage into a Kubernetes infrastructure. So as the VMware world evolves around Kubernetes support, you've got choices. Either do this on a data store within VMware, or do this natively into the compute layer using the CSI driver and deliver this natively into those applications, and therefore enabling other capabilities around snapshots and clones at a more micro level. We combine all of our services with a remote mirroring capability. Remote mirroring can be VPSA to VPSA. They can be within a VPSA within different storage pools. We can also do mirroring into object storage, which means that you can take a volume, you can mirror that into an object storage layer at lower cost. And then in the event of needing to go back, let's say you've got a snapshot that's 6 months old, being able to mount that snapshot back into any VPSA that's got access to that object storage, instantly mount it, pull the single file back or do a full restore of that data. We will prioritize the blocks that are read in the background, and this means that you've got an instant mount capability. So some nice features there. Alongside that remote mirroring capability, we have something that we call a remote clone. So if we're mirroring between two VPSAs, let's say you've got your primary site and you've got your disaster recovery site, and you need access to a snapshot that's in your DR site, but you don't want to do a full resynchronization, we can use that remote clone capability to project the volume or a clone of that volume from the target site back into the source site, mount that, make that instantly available, and again, just pull the files that we need and prioritize if we do need to do a full resync. So again, it's all about data management and delivering time and time utilization back into you. Other key features, we started life 9 years ago attached to AWS and doing what we call cloud adjacency. So from our very first inception, we were able to offer cluster support into a public cloud environment, offering support for SQL Server Standard Edition failovers rather than somebody having to move to Enterprise Edition and always on licensing. So, massive savings from a SQL Server licensing perspective there. We've continued to support that. We've continued to support that as a capability across multiple AZs in an AWS environment. We've continued to support that across an AWS VMC environment. So there's some nice things that we've built into our capabilities there, and combining that with all of our other capabilities around remote mirroring, snapshots, clones, thin provisioning, our VSS hardware provider into the Microsoft environment provides a quite effective way of doing data management without you having to provision large volumes and pay for resources that you're not actually using. Now, obviously, the world is concerned around security, and from day one, we've built security in mind because of the way that we've built our VPSA architecture. We also combine this with user-based keys. So each VPSA, the customer or the tenant is able to define their own encryption keys. This is an AES-256 encryption. So this means that you're able to encrypt your data with your keys. Zadara doesn't have access to these. If you're in a public cloud environment, the cloud provider doesn't have access to them. If it's a service provider and they're giving you direct access to the VPSA from a management perspective, they don't have access to them either. So it gives you, comfort in knowing that you're in control of your data, where it resides, where it's located, and data sovereignty is becoming more and more of a requirement and an issue as we move forward. So with all of this, you need a level of visibility into your environment, and this means that you need an interface that can deliver that. Everything that we do is web-based. Everything that we do is RESTful API-based. So this means that you're able to interact with your VPSAs and deliver a web-based interface, a RESTful API if you want to do automation. And if you're a service provider or you want to automate things from a cloud perspective, then our APIs and our tools are available to be able to do that. Now, in conjunction with that, we build everything in. So there's no extra add-ons. The chargeback and the billing capability is built into the product. So you're able to run usage reports. You're able to look at the resources that are available within your environment. And that gives you dynamic flexibility in terms of being able to look at what a particular application is costing or what a particular tenant is costing, and therefore enabling a simplified use. If we look at some use cases of where we typically see our customers deploying a Zadara infrastructure today, we have this combination of being able to offer, fiber channel block, Ethernet block, NAS, and object services, all from a common platform. Now, what this means is, regardless of what your host servers are, whether they're VMware or they're a mixture of VMware and physical, we're able to support all of those different instances and different ways of working. You may want to offer fiber channel because you've got some legacy fiber channel environments, but you may want to modernize that. And you may want to make use of our all-flash arrays with dedupe and compression and NVMe storage. And alongside that, you may have a requirement for a backup solution, and you may want to utilize iSCSI block for that and completely isolate your backup network. Why? Because that makes good common sense, especially as we look at some of the ransomware attacks that have happened certainly over the last few months, whereby everything being on a shared and common network may make things easier for people to infiltrate your infrastructure. So having separation of your backup environment onto dedicated networks may be something that can offer some additional levels of security for you. So combining that with our VPSA technology, the choice of different disk types, adding into that our object storage layer, and if you combine that with something like Veeam backup and recovery, and you use the immutability, then this gives you a scale-out backup repository where you've got high performance backup and restore capabilities onto VPSA2 as we're looking there, but then also longer term retention and immutable backups onto that object tier, which gives you an assurance that you're able to recover regardless of what the impact is. Now, as we go through some of these models, I'll start to highlight how you can maybe utilize cloud services or service provider services in conjunction with Zadara to provide greater levels of flexibility. And the first I want to touch on there is adding Zadara to a VMware cloud in AWS. So, VMware Cloud on AWS has been around for a while, and when that first came out, VMware and AWS, enabled a capability in terms of supporting a bare metal infrastructure, But to be able to gain access into that, you needed to VPN in, and it was not quite so easy at the initial point. It was an area that would make it difficult to get data in and out of. And there was a heavy lobbying of people wanting to support Direct Connect. And we were very much at the forefront of pushing both Amazon and VMware to support Direct Connect interface. The reason being is because by adding a Direct Connect interface, and this is the way that Zadara is able to present additional data services into a VMware cloud on AWS. So we have cloud adjacent locations to pretty much all of the AWS global cloud presence points. This allows us to present block and file capability across Direct Connect into that VMware cloud on AWS compute layer. So we're utilizing NSXT, we're utilizing AWS Direct Connect, and this allows us to present storage in natively into that compute layer. So you can run failover clusters for SQL Server, you can run backup environments to push the data off cloud if need be, but it also opens up some additional functionality. So you can utilize our snapshots and clones. You can utilize our remote mirroring, where you can mirror that data to object storage or mirror that to a completely different location. So if you were in London, for example, and you wanted to mirror to Frankfurt, then you can use the Zadara replication technology to mirror that volume or those volumes and that data from London to Frankfurt to Paris to Singapore to US East, US West, wherever you deem necessary from your recovery perspective. We also give you that choice of being able to utilize all flash, all hard disk, or a hybrid of the two, depending upon what your individual needs are. And again, combining this with offering NFS, CIFS, iSCSI block capabilities. And as we move this forward, you can introduce additional capabilities. Maybe you do want to utilize additional VMware Cloud on AWS capabilities. And what I mean by this is, if you create a VMware Cloud on AWS and that's your production, maybe you're using an AWS VPC as your test and dev environment, then you can present a clone, use the VSS snapshot provider to present a clone of that data into your VPC that's running native AWS environments and mount that. So again, great deal of flexibility in terms of needs around different business requirements. If you want to know more about what we do and how we do this, there's a link here to the VMware Cloud on AWS solutions. In the files that we've got attached, there's actually a tech document that I wrote on how to actually physically deliver this. And please feel free, if anybody's got any more questions, post this. Email address steve@zadara.com. I'm more than happy to walk through any of these scenarios, especially around the VMware Cloud on AWS piece. So other areas that we find a great level of needs from customers is around this data center extension capability. So some people are now starting to look at VMware Cloud on AWS as an extension of their existing data. And they've got their on-premises VMware SDDC. It may also be in a co-location facility. So let's say it's in an Equinix or a Cyxtera data center, and you want to be able to combine what your production workload is running in terms of your colo facility, and you maybe want to burst. Maybe there's times of the year, maybe a retail organization, and you need cloud bursting, and you want to use VMware Cloud on AWS for a small number of months while the seasonal requirements change. And maybe you want to combine the sharing of data services between those two locations. And again, depending on location, depending on how connectivity is done. And again, I'm more than happy to drill into more detail for people if there's ever an interest, is how we can provide, even things like failover clusters between these two locations, utilizing a Zadara VPSA and utilizing multiple subnet capabilities from a Microsoft SQL Server failover capability as well. Now, in doing this, what this means is you're able to initiate snapshots, clones, or share data without having to physically migrate and copy those workloads. So sharing between an on-premises colo into a VMware cloud on AWS, where we can get the low latency network connection, is a relatively simple mechanism from our perspective. And as I say, I'm more than happy to get underneath the covers and drill down into that in more detail if you believe that there's some value there. Now, the other area that we see is around business continuity. So take that VMware cloud on AWS, take your VMware SDDC, could be on premises, could be you're a service provider and you want to provide some additional assurances. Maybe you do want to use that VMware cloud on AWS environment. Or the reverse of it could be is that you've got your VMware SDDC, and instead of this being VMware cloud on AWS up here, this could be your service provider. But again, same capabilities. So we deploy a Zadara VPSA infrastructure on premises or via your MSP. You replicate using our remote mirroring capabilities and using our clone capabilities to integrate that either into the VMware cloud on AWS or into a service provider partner who's able to take those mirrors in and offer you things like a high availability solution, or more importantly, probably a disaster recovery solution as you move forward. Combining this with other technologies like Veeam Data Labs from a recovery perspective provides a plethora of different options that I could be here for hours talking about all of the different options, but these are central key points in terms of just an overlay of what we can do and what's achievable. And I'm going to push back into that, running SQL Server Standard Edition again. I did a lot of analysis in terms of the costs of running SQL Server inside a cloud environment. Now, those of you may be aware that Microsoft changed its licensing laws around being able to move certain licenses into a cloud provider, whether that's Azure, whether that's AWS, or whether that's AWS on VMC. And therefore, the cost of provisioning licenses, the cost of moving licenses becomes a little bit more complex. But if you're running Windows SQL Server failover clustering, and you've got multiple databases, and you've got software assurance, then you've got the ability to mobilize and virtualize your environment in a slightly different way. Because if we take single instances for the databases, and most people aggregate a number of databases across different environments, then you may be able to leverage by having SQL failover clustering enabled rather than resorting to always on. Now, why would you use failover clustering instead of always on? Well, if you look at always on clustering, then it adds complexity in terms of users and groups and permissions, where failover clustering, all of the databases, including the temp DB, fail across to the other instance. The other aspect is SQL Server Standard Edition supports failover clustering. So if you're within the realms of an active passive failover, if you're within the realms of needing a reduction in your license costs, and you can contain that in a Standard Edition license count, why wouldn't you do that? And really what we're saying here is think about the costs and the technology enhancements of actually remaining with a failover clustering, especially in a VMware on AWS environment, and make use of our VSS capabilities to deliver snapshots and clones into test environments as well as production. Again, if you want to know more, there's a paper that we've written around utilizing SQL Server in AWS around VMware, but the same rules apply natively into AWS as well. So if we take that concept of snapshots and clones, then we can start to do some clever things as well. Maybe you want to create a clone of a database or clone of a file system. You want to map that to a completely different environment, run some analysis on that without having to fully copy all of that data. Our clones are instantaneous. They consume no additional space until you write extra data into them. Now, the other nice thing about our clones is that they're fully independent volumes. So all of the data that is shared with the original volume remains shared. However, if you overwrite into the clone, then it is getting its own mapping table, and therefore the data that is being written into there is completely independent. So it's almost like a dedupe capability, but knowing that you've got complete independence between each volume. So if we use clone volumes to do certain things, maybe it's analytics data sets, maybe it's to anonymize data. Maybe you've got a database, maybe it contains users and email addresses, but you want to do some analysis but remain within GDPR. Maybe you're allowing a third party to access some of that data. You may want to anonymize that first. So having a writable clone that enables you to update just the parts of data that need to be updated without having to provision another 10 terabytes of storage, for example, is really a differentiator that we believe in terms of this combination across a hybrid IT environment. So I'm coming back to backup. Backup from our perspective is the critical component of really what we're building a lot in conjunction with Veeam. We've done a lot of work with Veeam around their 32110 zip code backup capabilities. You think back, a lot of organizations have talked about 321. I think Veeam have taken it that extra level, having 3 copies of your data, 2 different media, one of which is offsite and one of which is immutable or offline. Now, the offline piece has been push that off to tape for a long time. But this whole COVID thing has introduced a new dynamic. And we've seen a lot of new customers, new partners come, and they've gone, we can't get into the data center. We can't change the tapes. What can we do? And having an immutable object storage means that they're able to satisfy the needs of the business around having a offline copy or an immutable copy. And combining that with things like Veeam Data Labs means that they're able to mount a copy of that data, utilize Veeam Data Labs, utilize the Zadara VPSA to act as the restore point. And again, it's completely independent, to be able to mount that storage and present that back to the business to say, hey, look, we've been able to test our disaster recovery. If we're hit by a ransomware attack, then we're able to recover in this way. But also, because of using things like Veeam Data Labs, you're able to do an offline scan of that data, of those VMs, to see whether there's known ransomware or virus capabilities hidden within those images. So as an end-to-end look, this is typically what we see in many of our environments. We see customers who are utilizing maybe production storage, could be something else, could be vSAN, could be Zadara, could be any other vendor. But then combining that with our VPSA capability to provide a primary tier on-site copy, a backup copy that could be another VPSA in another data hall or another location, providing a scale-out backup repository. Or you may be utilizing a Veeam Cloud Connect partner, and maybe you're a VCSP yourselves, and you want to make use of having a scalable backup tier and a scalable object tier to create a sober environment that delivers an immutable capability. And really inside the the VCSP, this is how we see a lot of our VCSP partners operating, where they're offering multiple storage tiers, using the multi-tenancy built into Veeam, using the multi-tenancy built into Zadara, and offering that separation. Now, whether you're a service provider or not, having separation is key for your backup environments, and especially protecting those backup environments from ransomware attacks is becoming more and more imperative. All of the most recent ransomware attacks have attacked backup streams, and deleting backup streams is one of the key mechanisms that they're deploying. So utilizing things like Cloud Connect provide an extra air gap. They provide separation. If you're operating with multiple tenants, you can share that and use Veeam to handle that. But alongside that, you can use Veeam and Zadara with dedication to completely isolate tenant A, tenant B, tenant C, etc. So why partner with Zadara? The key thing is we built this with you in mind. We built this with our customers in mind from day one. I mentioned earlier around security and encryption. We built this into our VPSAs from day one, whereby the customer owns the encryption keys. If you think back in 2011, when we launched connected into AWS and OpSource, which is now Dimension Data in the US, we were hybrid and multi-cloud then, but we still needed to ensure that our customers were able to have encryption both in flight and at rest, and they manage the keys. And this is something that we've built forevermore into our capabilities, and we'll continue to do so. Combining this with our management. So we offer a 100% uptime guarantee, and we back this up by having live proactive management 24/7, 365. And this means that we're monitoring your environment. We're making sure that your drives are not failing. We're making sure that your VPSAs are online. We're making sure that the infrastructure is in a healthy state. We're also responsible for doing the things that nobody wants to do anymore. The upgrades of hardware, software. We build all of that into our service. And we've got a team of experts in terms of our DevOps teams that can help you do some of the things that may be more complex, especially when you're looking to automate things. But the other key element here is that we enable you to change. You want to change drives? No problem. Okay, we'll enable that for you. You just let us know what you need when you need it. Okay, and from me and my team, we're always here to help you get the very, very best out of Zadara every single day. And we're not just doing this on small scale. We've got thousands of arrays spread across hundreds of data centers, whether they're service providers, private entities, public cloud environments. We're already spread across 5 continents, and we're growing on a daily basis, not on a weekly basis. We are growing massively in terms of our capabilities, whether that's object storage, block storage, hybrid capabilities. This is a constant growth that we're seeing because this model is very, very different. Why is it different? It's because we're converting your CapEx. Let's buy a storage array today and sweat it, knowing that it's the best of breed today. But what happens when tomorrow, when we introduce new drive technology, when we introduce new protocols, new ways of working? What are you going to do then? You've got to buy again. In the Zadara world, you don't have to buy again. You're able to manipulate and change and move as your business moves and changes. This means from your perspective, it's less risk. You don't have to worry about the data migration. We're going to handle that. We're going to take control of that. This means that you've got reduced storage administration. Your people can focus on the higher value tasks of the VMware estate, the application estate, rather than just keeping the lights on for storage. And this means that whether you need to scale up or scale down, whether you need to change, you're able to do so without wasting your spend. And this is a key. If we look at what's been going on across the planet over the last 9 months, organizations have gone through critical changes. In our world, we've enabled our customers to scale up, scale down, and change based on their demands. And if customers 9 months ago would have bought and expensive all SSD array and then suddenly found that they didn't have the capability to deploy it, they're still stuck with that cost. Our customers, they've been able to reduce their spend. Other customers who have needed to move in a completely different way to more remote working and wanted to do a VDI installation, they've been able to scale up on demand, knowing that if they eventually move back to an on-premises capability and in-office capability, they can scale that back down as well. And if we then combine that with where we're going around technology costs, SSD costs have continued to come down. This last 12 months, we've seen that level off a little bit, but you can see, across the lifetime of our customers, they've been able to take advantages of whenever we've introduced new drives and we've reduced the cost, we've passed that cost on to the customer. Okay, that's throughout their life cycle. We've not said to them, hey, you bought this in 2013, you're stuck at that cost. They've been able to come with us on our journey. And this is why we've built this with our customers in mind, because what we're offering is enterprise grade performance and security and agile infrastructure. Pay only for what you use, but let us be your support partner and manage the bits that you don't want to manage in terms of the back-end storage, the upgrades, the firmware changes, and let us be the partner that enables that change mechanism as you go through a hybrid IT journey. So why do our partners choose Zadara? Because we built them, this whole thing with them in mind. We've got enterprise, some of the world's leading customers, some of those logos on there you will recognize. We announced yesterday this massive 5G piece with Rakuten. They're building a global 5G network. We're underpinning that. It's a very, very exciting time from us. We'd like you to be part of that journey. But we've got other customers, certainly service provider customers, that have been on this journey with us for the last 5 years plus. K3 Business Technologies, service provider based up in Scotland, stretched cluster, ISA capabilities, split across multiple data centers. We've removed their EMC and NetApp arrays. We're delivering multi-tenant with segregation for each and every customer. They've gone to an ISA capability. They've delivered 33% more IOPS than iSCSI software initiator just by implementing Mellanox NICs within the compute layer. And they're also an on-premise as a service partner as well. They're able to offer their same capabilities out through their reseller arm into their customers and offer all of that replication and DR capabilities that we sort of talked about earlier on. Combining that with other organizations, Softcat, huge PLC IT provider in the UK. We underpin their managed services capability. Why? Because we're able to offer that same capability in terms of multi-tenancy, dedicated resourcing, scalability in terms of chargeback and billing, and proactive management to work hand in hand with them to deliver what their business needs. So with that in mind, we offer a free trial capability. You can connect to us into a public cloud environment. We can deliver this on premises. If you want to just try this out in a public cloud environment, please go ahead and set up a free trial. We'll be in contact. If you want to know more about delivering this as an on-premises capability, again, click through the free trial or send an email into sales@zadara.com. We'll be in contact and we'll talk you through that whole process. But throughout all of this, our support team will deliver the training, deliver the support to ensure that you get everything that you need right the way through your journey with us. So with that, I'm going to hand over back to Julie. If anybody's got any questions, more than happy to take them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Steve, for taking the time to speak to us today. As a reminder to the audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast and let us know how today's session went. From all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.
So Julie, there's a question here that I'd like to answer.
Okay.
There's a question come in around the ability to change technology and how that operates. So I'll refer back to the K3 case study that we had there. So when we introduced K3, they were running on SAS drives, 900 gig SAS drives, and we did a like-for-like swap. And then we introduced our 800 gig SSDs, and we delivered those at the same price we were delivering the 900 gig SAS drives at. They were able to online volume migrate from 900 gig SAS to 800 gig SSDs, and there was no cost differential to them in doing that. Yes, they lost a little bit of capacity, but the extra capacity for most of their VPSAs was there to deliver extra performance to their customers. And as we then moved that forward, we introduced our 1.6 terabyte drives. We introduced those at the same price as our 800 gig SSDs. They again did an online volume migration. We then introduced our 3.84 terabyte drives, around about 30% uplift from the 1.6s, and they were able to go through the same process. So they're now in the process of going through the same thing in terms of 7.68 terabyte NVMe drives. But the key element here that I want to expose is that, you know, in the 5 years that they've been running Zadara, they've gone through 4 technology refreshes that if they'd have bought that as a CapEx model, they physically wouldn't have been able to go through that process. And therefore, we've been able to and allow them to significantly scale while retaining the same footprint and also reducing their costs and their cost per gig. That's allowed them to stay relevant in the market and allow them to remain competitive. So that's a key question I wanted to answer.
Okay, do you want us to wait another minute to see if more questions come in, or?
Yeah, I'm just going to have a look, see if there's anyone. So there's a question from Sahib Pasha around partnership. What's the minimum requirements? Today, there's no minimum requirements from a partnership perspective. You know, we work very closely with our partners in terms of training. I suppose the minimum requirement is commitment to partner with us and work with us is the main thing that we're looking for from our partners. People who are going to, you know, help us push our technology and capabilities into the marketplace. You know, we're very, very, very open in the way that we work with our partners, and we want to work with them to deliver the best capabilities. There's another question here that I have around any advice for startup MSPs. The best advice I'll say to you is come and talk to us. We'll help you understand our pricing models. We'll help you understand how to get, you know, the MSP side off the ground, especially, you know, if you're looking to deliver new services like backup or DR as a service, or you want to do new hosting capabilities. We've got a plethora of skills, especially in my team, in the solutions architecture team, that would be more than willing to talk to you and guide you through that process. Okay, so I've got another question around integration with third-party backup software. We've done a number of integrations with various organizations in certifying backup products, etc., particularly the likes of Veeam. Again, each vendor has different requirements, different needs. We work with a great number of different partners in different ways. They could be technology relationships, they may be meet in the channel relationships, or it could be the likes of what we've done with a Segra, where they've built a capability on top of our technology to offer that as a service. So there's various different levels in terms of technology partnerships, as well as sales partnerships, meeting the channel basis. But more than happy to take that offline and go through in more detail if required. Okay, final one. How can we get more knowledge, insights about Zadara? Contact us. We're more than happy to do a one-to-one going through our requirements, your requirements, and working very, very closely with you. We're here to help and guide. This is just an entry point into some of the capabilities that Zadara has. So Imran, please reach out. Drop me an email, steve@zadara.com. I'm more than happy to drive through in whatever way you want to move things forward. Okay, Julie, I think that's all of the questions answered.
Okay. All right, great. Well, like I said, thank you again for taking the time to speak to us, and to the audience, thank you as well for taking the time to join us today. And everyone, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for hosting. Thanks all for coming.